It's working. Okay. Wait, I redid some things. So now I'm like, it
Okay.
looks different and it's the buttons are different.
Um,
Uh, but yeah,
okay.
no, I am a geriatric millennial for sure.
Whoa.
So it's so complicated that it's so funny
Mhm.
that I will have I'll know what to do, I'll know how to do the things until
Mhm.
someone asks me how to do
Mhm.
the things or someone's looking at me doing the things and then I can't. I have like terrible performance anxiety.
Oh my gosh, trust me. I know all about that, so I know. I
So
do.
I'm really excited about our topic. The Tao Te Ching and Taoism is something obviously that ha creeps up a lot in the peripherals of what I
Mhm.
study because,
Nice.
I teach yoga and meditation and have been pretty deeply obsessed with all of that kind of stuff, like
Mhm.
Eastern philosophies and
Mhm.
the of a vast majority ever since I was in my early 20s and like or late teens and discovered that that world existed
Right.
at all because I was very, very sheltered as a kid. Unintentionally. They were not trying to shelter me. It's just what
Mhm.
happens in a small town when you grow up in the
True.
woods and on farms and there is no internet. And so you really, I think that that maybe really had obviously it had a huge impact on me since I
Yeah, yeah.
lived that way and you are
Mhm.
kind of a product of your environment and whatnot. But
Oh yeah.
it's really given me, because I did not even know the rest of the
Mhm.
world existed at all until I was like in fifth or sixth grade. And
Okay.
then I remember I was in fifth grade when this is very American politics type stuff. I don't know where you're located or, your accent obviously suggests that you did not grow up in the US.
An hour. You're right.
But when I was in fifth grade, so I would have been about 10. We
Okay.
had a presidential election, and I was just so taken aback. I was like, presidential election? What's a president? American government? What's a
Oh my
government? What are
God.
you talking about?
That's me right now. So I can relate.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know there was
Yeah.
anything outside of
Mhm.
Alabama. And uh, I was talking to my friends last night about music,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that there
Mhm.
was any kind of music other than country music until I was in high school. I got
Yep.
my elementary school fed into a high school. So once
Mhm.
you hit sixth grade, you went to a completely
Mhm.
different school. And I got over there and people were listening to like rock and rap. And I was like, what in the world is any of this? And I was automatically in love. But anyway, that's given me because I didn't know the rest of the world existed when I was a kid. Now I've always been just fascinated with
Mm.
all the other cultures and all the
Yeah.
other ideas around the world and
Mhm.
how, it just doesn't, I love the fact that the internet's brought us together and now we can discuss these
Mhm.
things and talk about these things because, you know, I'm not one to like, there's no point in whining to me about things you
Mhm.
don't want fixed.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
okay, well, where's the solution? What's the solution? And it's
Mhm.
so crazy to me that we've had solutions for things for
Mhm.
thousands of years, and we're all just like in our heads about, and
Yeah.
it's, we don't want to play the blame game. It's nobody's fault. We didn't have
Mhm.
access to the information. Before the internet, you had to, for one, know what the problem was. And if you can't name it, you don't even know what it is. And then for two, know which direction to point yourself for a solution, which is hard in and of itself. And then you
Mhm.
had to talk to the people in your village and hope that anyone had a direction to point you. And then libraries are very, like local libraries are very
Right.
limited. They
Yep.
almost never have what you need,
Mhm.
especially back then. And then,
Yep.
textbooks are fallible because they
Mhm.
come from
Mhm.
people and people are fallible.
Yep.
And we always want to
Yep.
put textbooks up on a pedestal with like, doctors and lawyers and,
Mm,
insert whatever pedestal
hmm.
presidents,
Hmm.
rulers, yada, yada. But the
Yep.
truth of the matter is that we're all human.
Absolutely. And that is the paradox, right? The whole the I've been fascinated with spirituality, Savannah, as long as I can remember. And I could relate to the story, right? When more kids of my age wanted to watch TV or run outside, and I was the child who loved going with my grandfather to listen to spiritual discourses. And I was very fortunate to have that exposure very early on in my life. He would take me to hear. I have a guru, very fortunate to have a guru in this lifetime, Sri Satya Sai Baba, and many other teachers that he deeply admired. So my grandfather listened with such reverence, and I watched him with the same awe. And his message was simple, and that was truth is one, paths are many. He thought love also all. And he thought that peace wasn't a spiritual idea, right? It was our true home, what he called the abode of supreme peace. And in a beautiful way, my name was given in alignment with that vision. My name means, Prashanthi means supreme peace. And I grew up knowing that my name itself was a reminder, not of something to achieve, but something to return to. Like between growing up in a family that honored multiple belief systems and having a guru who embodied this inclusiveness, I learned early on that spiritual insights isn't a fixed point. It's a living conversation, and curiosity, when it's gentle and open, can hold far more than a certainty can ever. And because of that, my turning point wasn't dramatic, right? It was just an evolution, a slow peeling back of layers, and at the same time, learning to let certain layers be. And growth and acceptance just always is happening side by side. And as I moved through life as a mother, as a wife, as a professional, and that early spiritual imprint just kept whispering to me. And eventually during that deep questioning, and something just opened the way, and the Tao just came through into my life, almost like an invitation. I did not know Tao. I recently came in contact with the Tao, very recently, a couple of years ago. And the way that it came into my life, Savannah, I'm telling you, it was dramatic. Like it just entered into my life, and I was going through a very deep spiritual. I wouldn't say it wasn't an enlightenment, because I still am very much on the surface. I'm yet to go deeper into my own spiritual layer. But when I was listening to your podcast with Zani Thompson, I guess, about the spring, and I just loved it, because we are at the beginning of the spring, and if you look around carefully, you see love everywhere, just
Mhm.
quietly blossoming in the trees, in the air, in the way life just begins again without asking for permission, right? Spring doesn't force itself, it just simply arrives. And that feels like a perfect moment to offer something close to my heart, right? And coming out here doing this podcast in front of like I'm a very private person. As we were having a conversation, I'm not into Instagram as social media. I'm mostly um, just to myself. So for me to come here and talk about Taoism, and Tao is something that cannot be spoken. So right on the first line of Tao Te Ching says that when you
Mhm.
try to define Tao, there's no language for it. We honestly don't
Mhm.
have a language to define our feelings,
Mhm.
and how things would progress in our life. So paradox just becomes so essential. And one of the deepest Taoist words is strong winds don't last all morning, and heavy rain doesn't last all day. And when I really sat with that, something became very clear. So much of our suffering just comes from trying to make emotions either permanent, or trying to make them disappear immediately. But the Tao reminds us that Nothing forced, exaggerated, or overly controlled can last in nature, not in weather, not in us. And so my relationship with emotions softened, and instead of dramatizing them or just suppressing them, I began doing something much simpler, like speaking the truth in few honest words, like I'm sad, I'm afraid, I'm tired. No story, no justification, no performance, just truth. Just express gently and just live through. And that clarity is what paradox is all about. And that paradox really helped me to let go of needing my feeling to be validated or understood by others. When emotional expression aligns with inner truth instead of external approval, something stabilizing just happens inside. And the Tao teaches that anything forced cannot endure. And so why we force our emotions to be anything other than what we are. And now when something intense arises, I don't try to hold it together perfectly and I don't collapse into it either. And I just let it move through me naturally, like wind, like rain, like every cycle that Art describes, right? That balance allows emotions to complete their cycle, and this to me is emotional freedom, not the absence of strong feelings, right? But the ability to meet them without the force, to let them come, to let them go, and to trust that nothing we feel really is meant to last forever,
Hmm.
and that that kind of widens that perception of the paradox and what the Tao is. And if I had to begin with honesty, I would say the Tao cannot be explained, and yet I'm here trying to talk about it. That
Yeah.
itself was the first paradox. The word Tao literally translates to the way, but it doesn't mean a path you choose or the direction you follow. The Tao is the way life moves when we stop interfering.
Hmm.
It is the underlying intelligence of existence, the rhythm beneath all things. The Tao is not a god you worship, not like a belief system, not a philosophy you adopt. It's the natural order that is already unfolding. Like it doesn't mean you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. The Tao is how the river flows, how season changes, how breath raises and falls, how growth happens without instruction. And the moment we try to define it too precisely, it slips away.
Hmm.
And that's why Tao Te Ching opens with a paradox. A paradox of the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. In other words, the moment we think we've captured it, we haven't. And this is where paradox enters the conversation. Paradox is not a contradiction in Taoism. Paradox is a description of reality. We are used to thinking in straight lines, good or bad, right or wrong, strong or weak, success or failure. But the Tao doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in cycles, in relationships, in reversals. And this is why Taoist wisdom sounds strange to the logical mind, because softness is stronger than force, and yielding overcomes resistance, and not knowing is closer to wisdom than certainty, and doing less accomplishes more. Like at first, right, these sound poetic, maybe even impractical, but look at the nature. Water is soft, yet it shapes mountains. Trees that bend survive the storm, the rigid ones break. The night gives birth to day. Winter makes spring possible. Paradox is not a puzzle to solve, it's a truth to live inside. And here's where it becomes deeply personal, that most of our suffering comes from resisting the paradox. We
Hmm.
want the clarity, we want the growth without the discomfort, love without the vulnerability, and peace without the surrender. But the Tao teaches that life does not work that way. And yin and yang, the most popular, famous Taoist symbol, are not supposed to mean they're fighting each other. They're partners. They contain the seed of one another. And when one reaches its extreme, it naturally transforms. And this means strength needs gentleness, action needs rest. Knowing needs not knowing. And when we deny one side, imbalance follows and paradox shows up, not just in philosophy, right, but in our lives. We know conceptually that love matters, that we struggle to embody it consistently. We understand oneness, yet we feel separate. We long for peace, yet we still keep fighting ourselves. And from a Taoist perspective, this doesn't mean we are failing. It means we are human. And Tao never asks us to transcend our humanity. It asks us to stop waging war against it. Paradox teaches humility. It reminds us that wisdom is not about having answers, it's about staying responsive. Sometimes the wise move is action, sometimes it's restraint, sometimes it's speaking, sometimes it's just listening, and sometimes it's silence. And the Tao does not offer formulas, it offers orientation. And paradox is the compass. And when life feels contradictory, when you feel both strong and fragile, clear and confused, and Tao doesn't ask you to choose a side. It asks you to hold the whole, because the Tao is not found in escaping attention. It's revealed by staying present within it. And maybe that's the most liberating inside of all, and don't have to resolve life to live wisely. And you don't have to eliminate paradox to find peace. You simply have to stop insisting that reality be simpler than it is. The Tao flows, whether we understand it or not, and paradox is its way of reminding us that life is not a problem to solve. It's a rhythm to trust without the proof. Right? That's the hardest part for me is trusting without the proof, Savannah. Like, how do you do that?
Just gotta have faith.
Yeah, but
No, I know.
that's
It's a joke because that's exactly
I
what
know.
Christianity says. It's like you just have to have faith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, no, there's this guy
Hmm.
on the internet. He does like
Yeah.
reels on TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. And
Yep.
he's like the recipe guy or something. And every time he tries
Yeah,
a
yeah.
recipe that's good, he takes his glasses off and throws them at the wall. It's very
Well,
obnoxious. But the whole time you're talking, I had this urge to like take my glasses off and throw them at the wall because yes, agree completely with all of it.
hmm
Um, from from beginning to end. It's so funny
hmm
because yes, I had I was at a barbecue one day
hmm
and there was, I always get stuck with the wives, even though I don't necessarily like to talk about the like to talk about. And
Uh-huh.
but they were talking about religion and I was quietly listening because I know that most people don't want to hear my opinions on
hmm
it.
hmm
And then one of them turned to me and she said, "What do you believe, Savannah?" I was like, "Well, I believe
hmm
that whatever is just is, and
hmm
that it's too grand that we could never bring words to it, and that we get lost in trying to, and
hmm
in trying to bring words to it and understand it is what creates the friction that, and again, I did not say it any way near this eloquent
hmm
because it was like 7 years ago and I've grown a lot since then. But essentially, this is what I was saying is is that rigidity of wanting to define and wanting to label and wanting to encapsulate, which we can never do because the universe is too vast. We could never possibly begin to bring an ounce of description to it, honestly. But that rigidity of wanting to is what it essentially has created so much turmoil between this religion and that religion throughout the entire world. You know, I from a again, I was very isolated as a child. I had no idea because I grew up in what they refer to as the Bible Belt in the US. So very religiously strict Christianity just everywhere, and that's your only option. Okay. It's your only option. Now you have a little bit of a wiggle room in there. You can be a Baptist Christian, or you can be a Church of Christ Christian, or you can be a Pentecostal Christian, or you can be a
Okay.
Catholic Christian. But essentially, it's all just various branches of
Right.
Christianity. And I did grow up, of course, deeply ingrained in all of that,
Hmm
and I knew that there were other religions in the sense of I knew because they talked about it in church and they talked
Hmm.
about how, preaching the word of God and our
Yeah.
religion is the only right religion. I was like, and the
Hmm.
more I grew and the more I learned and the more I branched
Hmm.
out and was like understanding, like from a pretty early point, I was like, okay, just brushing across the generics, the shallow basics
Hmm.
of all of
Yep.
these religions, they seem pretty similar
Hmm.
to me. Like kindness, compassion, together,
Yep.
generosity, gratitude, love thy neighbor, don't kill anyone. I mean, it seems pretty obvious.
Yep. Yep.
And so it felt to me like we were, from a very early age, I was like,
Hmm.
forget who the messenger was. Did you get the
Hmm.
message? Because it doesn't seem like any of you did,
Looks
judge
like
not.
you did. You did, Savannah.
And it's been a
That's
very lonely life
beautiful.
because,
I
but
know. I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
I feel very close to you when you say, because I think we both had a very similar, in a different way, but in a very similar style of upbringing. Because I was brought up in the same way as you, but with multi-faith, with the belief that all religions one, you have to love all and so all, and that's pretty much what you grew up with as well. And it's beautiful that we come from a totally different background, geography,
Hmm.
and all that, and we still are able to connect here through this forum, through the internet. And this is the beauty. And don't you think this is work of God, a work of that universe of consciousness, the Tao, whatever you want to call that?
Sure.
It's work of that, bringing people together and talk about the trust and surrender, because they sound very simple, right? Trust and surrender, and yet they're some of the most complex experiences we can have as human beings. Trust sounds easy, because when you said trust, I laughed at it because it sounds easy when we
Hmm.
when we say it loud, but in reality, trusting means letting go. It means placing faith not in an idea, but in another person in life, in timing, in something that is beyond our immediate control. And for someone like me, someone who has very little patience and wants everything to arrive right now,
Hmm.
trust does not come naturally. It feels, in fact, it feels very almost unnatural for me. And I like momentum, I like clarity, I like results. So surrender, real surrender, just feels like standing still when every part of me wants to know. and and this is where, I've come to realize that peace doesn't come from getting what we want quickly. It's come from understanding the gap between where we are and what we desire. The gap, that space between the current reality and the future hopes, is where most of our suffering lives. And we are here. We want to be there. And the mind is constantly trying to close that distance as fast as possible. It says, why isn't it happening? What am I missing? What do I need to do next? But here's what I've been learning slowly and sometimes painfully. The gap is not the problem to eliminate. It's a teacher. Trust doesn't mean like
Hmm.
pretending you don't have desires. Sometimes surrender doesn't mean giving up on growth. It just means learning how to stay present inside the gap.
Hmm.
And when we don't understand this, we try to force outcomes. We rush conversations. We rush decisions. We rush healing. We rush life. And the irony is, the more we rush, the further peace feels.
Yeah.
And it'll show up fully in this
Hmm.
moment, or surrenders, without demanding, without it becoming something else. That's hard, especially for those of us who are driven, curious, and deeply invested in becoming more. And here's the truth, right? The moment you stop fighting the present moment, something inside you just relaxes, and from that relaxed place, the trust just begins to form, not as an idea, but as a felt experience. You start to see that life is not withholding from you. It's not because the future suddenly becomes clear, not because desires disappear, but because the relationship to the future changes. Instead of obsessing over what hasn't arrived yet, you begin to ask,
Hmm.
is it unfolding? Not just on your preferred timeline. And this is where peace becomes possible, right? How am I meeting what's here right now? Am I tense or am I open? Am I forcing or am I listening? Am I present here completely or mentally somewhere else? And
Mhm.
that shift is everything because peaceful life is not built by closing the gap overnight, right? It is built by learning how to live well inside that gap. And trust grows when we see that we don't have to manage every outcome. And surrender just grows when we realize clarity often comes when we stop pushing. But it is hard to do that. We know all this in like conceptually, but for me, especially, it's been very difficult to let go and make peace with it. So I've decided to sit with that middle space. That's where I am. I'm sitting in that beautiful space of and not either or, and
Mhm.
I'm there, um, just floating through life, and just making it through every single day of my life, and just trusting and believing that the only way I could get through this is by just being here now,
One day at a time, one
one day
moment
at a
at a
time.
time, radical
Exactly.
acceptance of the moment in the moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
we everybody has such a hustle culture these days. We're just like,
Yep.
go, go, go. We
Yep.
need more. We
Oh.
need to hurry. We need to hurry to get to. And
Yep.
it's this wonderful paradox where we spend all of our time
Mm.
every day, every week, every month, every year
Mm-hmm.
trying to do more so that we
Mm.
can hit the destination of spending time with our loved ones
Mm.
in, space and the space to breathe, the space to
Mm-hmm.
be present with our loved ones, the space to, when the truth of the matter is that when we get there, we look back and we're like, we missed
Yep.
everything. How many of us are hustling in the name of being present with our children and in
Mm.
doing so, completely ignoring our children? It's we think we think doing more, but you get what you focus on, right? And if we're trying to do more and be more and have more, then we're focusing on the lack thereof that way.
Mm.
And then that's what we're getting in return is the lack thereof. Whereas if every single one of us wakes up every morning with a completely stuffed to-do list and
Mm.
schedule, and if we panic against that, if we freak out against it, and
Mm.
because it's us living in the future is what
Mm.
is causing us to freak out and panic. It's like, oh, I have so much to do. I'm
Mm.
already pre-stressed out, and we
Mhm.
haven't even got there yet. I have all day to go, and then my evening, man, these
Mm.
3 hours this evening are going to be so
Mhm.
full. I'm already stressed out about it, rather than realizing that I have 1 hour, 2 hours this morning that are
Yep.
actually kind of spacious. And remembering that we are only one person, we can only do
Mhm.
so much. And most
Yep.
of us have the 3 to 5 people's amount of work on our plate every single
Yes.
day. So if you can
Easily.
just kind of accept that it is what it is, and
Mhm.
our thing, my go-to for like the past year or so
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
anyone dead or dying?
Mhm.
If no one's dead or dying, it's a good day.
I love
Everything's
that.
fine. Is if I don't get to the dishes
Mhm.
today because my schedule
Yep.
is so full, is
Yep.
anyone going to be dead or dying? No. If I don't get to sweep my floors today, is anyone going to be
Mhm.
dead or dying? No. So if you can just kind of come back to that, because nothing else matters, right? We're
True.
all
True.
here for a finite time. Life is too
Yep.
short, no matter under the best of circumstances.
Mhm.
Life is too
Mhm.
short. Tops out at the very most about 120,
Mhm.
and very, very, very few of us get that many years. So
Mhm.
many of us die before we need to, before we have to, before
Yep.
because of this circumstance or that circumstance, poor life choices,
Right.
accidents. When I was a kid, it became pretty quickly apparent to me that if I could just avoid getting in an automobile accident, I had a pretty good chance of making it to adulthood. And so that's kind of, and then I got to adulthood and I was very sickly. And then I was like, well, crap, if I can avoid the car accidents, cool. And like that was extreme. I kind of got it very obsessive over that. I had two car accidents in one weekend. I totaled two vehicles in one weekend, 3 days apart or 2 days apart. So one happened on like Friday and the other one happened on like Sunday. But did not drive for the next 6 years. Went to school and back, went to work and back. Other than that, if no one was there to drive me, I was not going. But that's a tangent. Um, so, I thought I was pretty successful in okay, I'm not going to die from this. And
Yeah.
then I was sickly and I was sick all the time. And it was just one illness after the other. And then I started to realize that lifestyle habits are probably the second most
Mm.
important thing that I needed the problems that I needed to avoid dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I became obsessive with that. But anyway, the point of the whole story is that the quicker that we can be present with ourselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
the quicker we can learn what is standing in our way of what we want. And more often than not, we have access to what we want in the present moment because we think we want money, we
Mm.
think we want
Mm.
travel, we think we want space, we think we want this, that, whatever, new pair of pants, shoes, whatever it is. If you really dig into that desire and that goal,
Mm.
it always ends in an emotion. Because why do we
Mm.
want that? We want that because we think that thing's going to make us feel loved,
Mm.
connected, bonded, belonging, peaceful, happy, whatever.
Right.
And in we think that the things are going to get us to those emotions when we have access to any emotion that we want in the present moment because we're capable of tuning our
Mm.
emotions. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of practice, like anything else. And when nobody is taught emotional regulation and nobody is taught
Mm.
how to, emotions are messy, emotions are problematic, emotions get in the way. That's why it drives me. I have a boy and a girl. Do you have children?
I have a girl.
You have a
She's
girl?
10.
She's
Yeah.
10. Okay, I have a 10-year-old boy and then I have a
Oh,
8-year-old girl.
nice.
And
Lovely.
he'll be 11 next month in like 2 weeks. But
Oh, happy
anyway,
birthday.
yeah. Anyway, I've always heard, because I have one of each,
Hmm.
everybody's always
Hmm.
like, "Oh, girls are so much harder. Girls are so much harder."
Hmm.
Girls are easier. Girls seem harder
Yeah.
because they are more attuned to their emotions. And
Hmm.
emotions are inconvenient for people because they take
Right.
patience and they take
Yes.
space. And you have to
Hmm.
hold that space and you have to have patience to hold that space.
Hmm.
And who wants to take the time to do that? That seems like the least important thing on our to-do list when we have a mountain of things that we need to do. And now this girl is crying and she doesn't even know why. So why do I like it's so frustrating that I have to sit here with her and hug her and love her and help her figure out what the problem actually even is
Hmm.
because she doesn't know and everything was
Hmm.
fine and then suddenly it wasn't. And whereas a boy, they're generally not as emotional, so they're seen as easier. But let me tell you, as someone who has both, my daughter, if you give her 10 minutes to have the emotions,
Hmm.
she gets over them real quick. And then she's a ball of sunshine and so helpful. And then she's like, I love you, Mom. What were the chores that we needed to do? I'll help you with those.
Oh.
I'll go feed the chickens. I'll go do this, I'll do that without even being Alex. She's so wonderful.
Wow.
My son, you can't take your eyes off of him for 10 minutes or he has a machete in a tree.
That's funny.
So, anyway, it's the yin and the yang. We need the
Yeah.
both. We need to make the whole, and we have
Mhm.
to see both sides of it. But all in all, the patience to sit with your emotions
Mm.
helps you get further in life because then you can have more clarity. Then you can understand why you're upset. You know, if you're
Yep.
rushing around and you're suppressing why you feel
Mm.
like this and why you feel like that instead of analyzing it and asking why
Mm.
you're feeling those emotions and then giving
Mm.
yourself some grace to be human because and I think that that's what I think that religions, I
Mhm.
haven't studied all of them by any means,
Mhm.
but I think that they all pretty well give you the same formulas for how to navigate the nightmare that is being human, because it is. It's a nightmare. Emotions are a nightmare.
Mhm.
We want to cling to the good ones
Mm.
and suppress the bad ones, but we have to have the bad ones to understand the good ones. And the bad ones are always going to show up no matter how good you get at tuning the good to yourself to the good ones. And I think that, you know, because our brains work in story
Mm.
form,
Yeah.
that's why people don't like to read textbooks or,
Mm.
even the best nonfiction self-help books are written in
Yeah.
story form. It's the
Mm.
author's own recollections of
True.
their
True.
their lives and their stories and their clients' lives and
Yep.
stories and how we got, well, here's the problem and here's the resolution and
Mhm.
here's the
Mhm.
journey that we got from point A to point B. And
Yep.
I don't know how most other religions are, but I
Mhm.
see that they're just stories. They're stories
Mm.
because that's what sticks in
Mm.
people's minds is stories, not bullet pointed information. That's boring. Our
Mm.
brain is like, I don't care about that.
Mhm.
But if you put it in story form and
Yep.
you give us characters to love and relate
Mm.
to,
Mm.
then it's the archetypes. It's
Mm.
in Christianity case, it's what would Jesus do? And
Mm.
then we get all hung up on other religions having deities, and it's like that's
Right.
just their characters and their stories.
Right. Right.
Like you're on opposite sides of the freaking planet. How do you expect you to have the same stories? They
Mm.
have Lord of the Rings and we're working with Harry Potter. It's not that deep, you guys. But
Yeah.
I mean, like it is obviously that deep,
Mhm.
but also it's not, it's that rigidity that we want.
Mm.
We want to be so our way's the only way. And it's like, no, that's not how nature works, And you take an animal that thrives in this environment, you move it to another
Mm.
environment, and it sinks and crashes. It's nothing is universal no matter what. You just have to, everyone needs something to believe in. I believe that wholeheartedly. We have an emptiness, and that's what spirituality essentially is,
Yep.
right? It's a
Yep.
belief system.
Absolutely.
And we get so hung up on whose belief system is the correct one,
Mm.
what is the right way? What are the true
Yep.
answers?
Mm.
And every single one of us live in our own little reality bubble, and we get to pick what our
Mm.
belief system is, and we get to pick what works best for us to help us
Mm.
be as happy and peaceful as we freaking can while we're here because life is short. So can we hurry up and get to the peace and happiness, please? You get to choose
That's it.
what helps you with that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what is helping those people over there. Do you even know what's helping you? Because most people I run into are
Mm-hmm.
miserable, unhappy, unhealthy, and just misery loves company. They're complaining about everything,
Yep.
blaming this and that. And it's like, do
Mm.
you even know what makes you happy? You sat with that and tried to figure that out? Because what makes me happy is believing
Mm.
in dragons and fairies
Mm.
and teaching my
Beautiful.
kids about magic. And,
Beautiful.
like we'll go out on a hike or no, no,
Mm.
no, that's too uh, hiking in and of itself, being in nature is
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm.
magical in and of itself.
Mm.
But bringing it back
Mm.
into the
Mm.
everyday normalities, you have to find magic in the mundane. My kids will be like, "Where are my shoes?" And I'll be like, "Oh man, I don't know. Did you leave an offering out to the elves?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, you have to. do these three chores. Did you make your bed? The elves like it when you make your bed, or they'll take your
Mm.
shoes. You just make up crap. It doesn't matter. And it bring, they roll their eyes or whatever, but it makes things whimsical. It makes things a little less
Mm.
serious because we can absolutely drown in seriousness and do. And that's why everybody is not only
Mm.
miserable and upset, but they're anxious and stressed out. And there's nothing worse for your
Mhm.
health and your well-being than being anxious and
Mm.
stressed out. And yeah, the world is burning. Oh, the world's always been burning. It's just we
Always.
have more access to the
Yeah.
information of it now.
Exactly.
Anyway, you talk for a while.
Um, no, no, this is there's a paradox about the future that kind of stopped me in my tracks, right? The first time I when I really saw it, it's this: the future is not something you worry about. It's something you build
Mm,
quietly out of the present moment. Because most of us have been taught to see future as something ahead of us, something to plan for, something to protect against, to fear. We kind of rehearse it constantly in our minds, right? What if this happens? What if it doesn't? Am
hmm.
I doing enough? Am I already too late? Because when I see my daughter not finishing her breakfast, I'm like, do I have to yell at her, or at least do I have to talk to her about her finishing her breakfast? Otherwise, she's going to end up hungry throughout the day. So, am I doing enough, or am I being a good parent? So, am I already too late? And just without realizing it, we abandon the only place where anything can actually be shaped, the present moment, right? And here's that paradox. The future does not have to respond to anxiety. It responds to alignment. And when we are fully present, not perfect, not the perfect version, not the certain version, just present, right? That quality of presence becomes the blueprint of what's to come next. Like, sit with that for a moment, right? If this moment is lived in fear, the future carries that imprint. If this moment is lived in scarcity, the future reflects that tension. And if this moment is lived with care, clarity, love, and goodwill, the future is gonna organize itself around that frequency. And this is where things get very practical. And this is why positive environments matter and why affirming that inner dialogue matters. Because why the people you surround with yourself with matters, not in a superficial, like good vibes only way, right? But in a deeply embodied way, because what you consistently expose yourself to shapes how you show up now. And how you show up now is what quietly builds what comes next. And being present isn't just about meditation or mindfulness, right? It's about showing up as your most authentic self in this moment,
Even if
not the
it's a
self
mess.
that you think, right? Not the one that you think you should be,
Hmm.
not the self that you're trying to become, the honest one. And that is crucial. And here's the other side of the paradox, and this is important, right? We cannot hold impossible standards for ourselves. Because presence doesn't mean being calm all the time, and authenticity doesn't mean being an enlightened version of yourself all the time. Alignment doesn't mean never feeling feared out or exhaustion. And if we turn presence into another achievement, we lose it. And this is where the real magic believes. It's in holding both sides without clinging to either, wanting the best for the future while accepting that today may still feel messy, and choosing alignment while allowing yourself to be human and showing up consciously without punishing yourself for old patterns that resurface. Because when you're harsh with yourself, right, you leave the moment. When you're demanding, you leave the moment. When you're trying to control your outcomes, you leave the moment. And when you allow yourself to be exactly where you are, something extraordinary happens. You stay. And staying is what builds the future. And this is a paradox that I'm sure you could relate to. The future doesn't need your worry. It needs your care. It doesn't need your certainty. It needs your presence. It doesn't need you to get everything right. It needs you to show up again and again and again with sincerity. So if you find yourself anxious, or which I do all the time, and about what's ahead, and I want to offer this gently, and this is a practice I do to myself as well. And you don't have to like solve the future. You just have to ask, how am I meeting this moment? Like, who am I being right now? Am I acting from fear or from alignment? And if the answer isn't what you hope for, it's okay. Notice it, soften it, sit with it, return, because the present moment is not a test, it's a workshop.
Hmm.
Everything you're becoming is being shaped here. And Tao Te Ching has as a way of doing something extraordinary, right? It meets you exactly where you are. And that's what it did to me. No matter what season I was in confusion and clarity and exhaustion. It met me precisely where I was. And not as an instruction or as a doctrine, right? But as a companion, something you return to, something you sit with, something that reminds you that it's okay to move slowly, it's okay to live inside the paradox. Because the universe or the Tao, they never rush, and neither do we have to. We don't have to rush. We just have to have that trust and surrender that everything is going to work out for the best, for our best, be it going through a rough patch, or being it you go through a burst of happiness. It just doesn't matter. They all come from that same place, and that's why paradox has become such a companion, such a close companion to me, and also I think paradox is so important when we talk about everything that's going on today in the world, right? And Tao Te Ching was not written from the time of peace. It was written during collapse. Historically, right, it emerged from ancient China during the late spring, autumn period, and where the old systems were failing. Leaders were obsessed with power and control, and the society was fragmenting. And it is precisely there in that environment Tao Te Ching was born, not to dominate, not as a strategy to reform society through force, not as another ideology that is competing for power, but as a quiet refusal to play the same game. While other philosophies at the time tried to fix the chaos. But Tao Te Ching asks a deeper question, right? What if the problem isn't that we lack control, but that we are trying too hard to control life itself? And this is what, and this made Tao Te Ching so radical because it didn't respond to violence with stronger systems. It responded with simplicity, restraint, and alignment with nature. Like Lao Tzu, we still don't know if it's an individual or if it's a symbolic voice. And he says strength is not force, it is softness. And by reorienting towards inward, and towards the duty and towards your surrender and towards the alignment, Tao Te Ching proves again and again that it may come from a different culture, from a different language, but same realization. All religions, like you said, Savannah, they have the same inner core, which is love. Like humanity's most enduring wisdom is actually not born when everything is working. It is born when everything is falling apart. And this brings us to now, because we are living through the time that feels deeply unstable. I know you mentioned we have been going through that for a while now, but at this point, it feels like we are at that tipping point where systems are strained and uncertainty is dissolving. But the history tells us something important, right? These times are not meaningless, they're formative. When old structures collapse, something new is always trying to emerge, right? But the emergence needs our patience and our humility and willingness to walk through this uncertainty. And wisdom is not certainty. It is not knowing. In a time when rulers believed order came from fear and enforcement, Tao Te Ching said no. But it didn't deny the chaos. It recognized that the life moves in circles, and this is why the text speaks in paradoxes, and we see this in a lot of other cultures like Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna offers to Arjuna, and and that the Bhagavad Gita, one of the oldest texts in the world, did not come from a time of peace. It came during the war, and Tao Te Ching is telling us how to escape is not to escape history, but it's teaching us how to stand wisely inside it. And honestly, too, it's one of the most meaningful texts. And it was written 2,500 years ago, and it has so much of wisdom in it. And the entire book was written by Lao Tzu within 5,000 characters, Savannah. He
Yeah,
only
it's
used
short.
5,000 characters. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, that means we are meant to go deeper into it and make our own translation out of it. And that's why I love Tao Te Ching, because it doesn't give you answers, it doesn't give you instructions. Do A, B, C, D, and you'll get there. It
Mhm.
it, it kind of trains your brain to accept paradoxes in a most gentle and natural way. And especially at this time and age, I guess it's very it made a lot of sense for me because I don't read books. Honestly, for someone to have written a book, I don't read books at all. I've probably read a couple of books in my life, and I started just penning down things in my notepad, and eventually that became a book, really. And it's just it's there for my own muse, I guess, psychic. And anytime I come and talk about Tao, I do feel like I'm in alignment, like how you mentioned about being that whimsical self. And for me, it's talking about Tao is when I am in my flow, I'm in my absolute alignment with what Tao is. And I've met my soul purpose, my what I should be doing the rest of my life is studying Tao, and is to embody what Tao has to offer in my life. So honestly, the paradox is that I'm like I said, I'm not a reader, at least not in a way that you might expect someone who wrote a book to be, right? In my adult life, I barely read few books, and as a child, I loved reading, but fantasy novels and thrillers and things like that. But honestly, responsibility, survival, becoming someone, that's always been my goal. So it's yeah, it was just yeah, honestly, now I know because the book was never meant to be consumed. It wasn't meant to be a conquered, highlighted, or summarized or masked. It was just meant to be met when I was writing. Something subtle but powerful was happening each time I returned to the page. It wasn't this, I wasn't the same person who had left it. I think, there were layers, many layers being peeled away, and not just in the writing, but in me. And when I did read parts of it after writing them, they felt different, not because the words had changed, but because I had.
Mhm.
And that's when it hit me. That Tao has been giving me this orientation. It's been slowly transforming me. And this is what Tao Te Ching has done for centuries on people. It doesn't explain life. It doesn't solve your problems. It doesn't tell you who you are or what to believe. It simply meets you exactly where you are. And depending on where you are in your life, that the same words land differently. And that's not confusion, that's wisdom. The Tao speaks in paradox because life itself is very paradoxical, soft, yet unbreakable. It's empty, yet we feel, that yet it is full, and knowing, yet never certain. And the moment you think you understand it, you don't. And the moment you stop forcing to understand it, and something opens up. And that's how the Tao came to me as from a higher self, and it taught me that you don't have to know everything to point towards something real. Sometimes the most honest feelings comes from not knowing, from standing in uncertainty without just rushing to escape it. And
Mhm.
that's Tao. It doesn't say here's the truth. It says look this way, and then it lets you walk your own. And that's what I experienced with the Tao. And also there's a concept called Wu-Wei. If you've heard about it, and that means like non-forcing, in a very healing way. And it is, so the Tao says, know the masculine, but keep to the feminine and be the ravine of the world. And this is the essence of non-forcing, right? The masculine represents the action, the direction, pushing, doing, the
Mm.
part of us that always wants to fix. And the feminine represents receptivity, intuition, listening, and softness. And Taoism doesn't ask us to abandon action. It asks us to root the action in receptivity, because healing doesn't happen through dominance. It happens through allowance. When Lao Tzu says, "Be the ravine of the world," he's pointing to the deepest paradox in healing. The valley is more powerful than the mountain. The ravine receives everything without resistance. And when we force healing through pressure, through perfectionism, or through self-criticism, right? And the body experiences that as another threat. And then the nervous system
Mhm.
responds by defending instead of repairing. And but when we shift into the feminine posture of openness, softness, and curiosity, I guess that's where the healing happen. And it's just let's the body be what it is without craving into what we think it should be, right? Functionally, this is profound. When the nervous system feels soft and receptive and non-threatened, it's immune to function improves, and inflammation decreases, and even our heart rhythms, even our body stops racing. And non-forcing means like responding instead of reacting, and guiding instead of gripping. The less we force healing, the more healing becomes possible, right? The Tao teaches that softness is not weakness, it's the intelligence. It's like I would talk about the intelligence of the water wearing down the stones, the intelligence of the valley feeding the whole mountain, the intelligence of the uncarved wood that holds infinite potential, and all that. So really, it sees, our Taoism sees relationship is not as a project, it's a collaboration, not as a conquest. The moment when the body's urgency kind of fits into our mind's rhythm, right? That's when you are in that state of Wu-Wei. And Laozi says that when we return to that softness, when we stop trying to carve ourselves into perfection, we revert back into infinite possibilities. And in that space, the body knows exactly what to do. So it is, yeah, it's such a beautiful ways of thinking and doing that the Tao has brought into my life. And yin and yang is another very popular Taoist symbol, I guess. And it's often misunderstood, right? In Taoism, yin and yang, most people think that it means balance, like light and dark, good and bad, opposites. But yin and yang are not opposites. They're partners. They're not fighting each other. They're dancing. And the moment we understand that, something in modern life starts to make sense, that yin and yang actually describe how life actually works. Yin is stillness, yang is action, and yin is rest, and yang is effort, and yin is listening, and yang is speaking. And neither is better, like neither is complete on its own. And here's a part we often miss, right? Each one contains the seed of the other. Like we constantly need the speed. Especially in the modern world, like even in light, we have to realize there is darkness, and even in strength there is vulnerability. Even in moment there is this need to stop, and that beauty is what is all about, or yin and yang is all about. But how the day turns into night, and how growth is followed by decay, and decay feeds growth again. And modern life, however, tells us to stay in growth mode forever, always expanding, always improving. You have to be
Mhm.
someone, you have to be becoming. But without yin, yang turns destructive. Without rest, action becomes aggression, right? Without that reflection, ambition becomes emptiness. Without softness, strength becomes rigidity, and it shows up everywhere in work, right? Where productivity replaces the purpose, in relationships where speaking replaces listening, in ourselves when self-worth becomes tied to achievement. Yin and Yang reminds us that wholeness is dynamic. Balance doesn't mean 50-50. It means responsiveness. Some seasons ask for moment, and some seasons ask for stillness, and the wisdom is knowing that difference. And there are moments in life when pushing forward is right, and there are moments when stopping is the most courageous thing you can do. And yin is not weakness, and yin is the wisdom that is waiting. And yang is not aggression, it's that energy that is in motion. And the Tao doesn't ask us to choose between them, right? It asks us to honor them both. So, what does this look like in practically, right, in modern life? It means allowing yourself to rest without the guilt. It means listening instead of reacting. It means not forcing clarity when life is asking for patience. And it means recognizing that uncertainty is not failure. It's yin doing its work, and action will come. And it always does. And when it comes from alignment rather than fear, it feels different. It feels effortless. And yin and yang are not about perfection. They're about participation, participating in the rhythm of life rather than trying to control it. So the invitation is simple, right? Notice when I notice when I'm forcing, and notice when I'm resisting rest, and notice when I feel that the softness around me just feels very uncomfortable. And that discomfort is the exact place where the balance is kind of trying to return to my place, because life isn't asking me to be constantly strong. It's just asking me to be whole. And the wholeness is not static. It moves, it shifts, it breathes, just like us, just like how we do. And it's just trusting that um, that action and my softness and my inaction both come from that same place of Tao. And it's staying in that beautiful middle ground of and. That's where I think paradox lives.
Yeah, every single day in every moment.
Yeah.
You know, we have all of these terrible misconceptions of how things work, how we work, how to get from point A to point B, and it's all just complete chaos, the truth of
Yep.
it.
Yep.
It's
Mm-hmm.
chaos with some cycles, and sometimes those cycles are big, and sometimes they're small, and sometimes they're
Mm-hmm.
medium, and sometimes they come around quick, and sometimes they come around slow. And, and nature has been the best analogy
Mm-hmm.
for me to explain all of this, because you're right. The more you understand it, the more words are not sufficient at all whatsoever. And I went through a spell for a while where I was like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know what to talk about anymore, because I don't know how to explain the because it's so complex until you get deeper, and then it's so simple, and then you're using complexities to explain the simplicities, and everybody's just like in a whirlwind, like, what are you talking about? And so you just
Mm-hmm.
keep trudging forward and keep using the words so that, maybe, because we're not trying to really, uh, convince anybody of anything. We're just trying to, I know life is hard. Life is a whirlwind, a complete. I heard an analogy the other day that I really liked in a book. Well, it wasn't really
Yeah.
even a book. I thought it was a book. I like audiobooks because I can listen to them while I'm cleaning or while I'm
Yep.
gardening
Yep.
or while I'm driving. And
Yep.
I found there's this author that I've been
Mm-hmm.
trying to read one of his books for
Mm-hmm.
like 2 years now. I do really
Mm-hmm.
like it. It wasn't in audio form, and I don't have time to really sit and read. And that's not me making an excuse. That's me being like, if I sit down, I will fall asleep. I'm the type of person that I am go, 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 crash. Go, 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 crash. If I sit down at all, I start like I can't focus on anything. But anyway, um, it was a Matrix Energetics book, if anybody's interested. And I was on Audible, and I got so excited I saw it pop up. because I've looked a couple of times to listen to this book so I can just get through it because I do like it. I just can't
Mhm.
sit. And I was so excited that it was on Audible now, and so I immediately bought it without any second thought. And I was kind of disappointed at first because it was not his book. It was just kind of him
Mhm.
talking about the principles and thoughts and stuff that he has. Um, Huge tangent to be like in this
Mhm.
book, he gave the analogy of the visualization of a tornado
Yeah.
or a
Oh.
hurricane and how, a hurricane's probably, he used tornado, but coming
Mhm.
from a place that has a lot of tornadoes, I
Mhm.
didn't know if that
Mhm.
was really a great analogy. So I'm shifting it to a hurricane, because the hurricanes makes more sense to people. When, a hurricane is essentially an enormous tornado, right?
Mhm.
In the center of it, everything's calm.
Mhm.
Everything's quiet, like almost
Yeah.
eerily still.
Yeah.
And then around you is where all the chaos is. And in his visualization, he said that if you can just imagine life being like this, and you yourself are sitting in the center of the eye of the storm where everything's calm, and you're not getting involved with the outside layers that are chaos. And this chaos can be, the people in your life, turmoil, from a small scale to a large scale,
Mhm.
war or just household problems. It could be sickness and disease. It can be whatever type of struggle you have going on, because every
Mhm.
single one of us have something at every single point in our life. There's never going to be a point where everything's completely hunky-dory from
Yeah.
top to bottom.
Mhm.
And if you can recognize that, and instead of getting swept up in the hurricane, in the winds, in the
Mhm.
tornado, you stay in the eye, stay in the center where everything's
Mhm.
calm and quiet. And,
Mhm.
the eye moves, the storm moves across the
Mhm.
land, and you move with it slowly. If you try to move too
Mhm.
fast, you get caught up in it. If you try to move
Yep.
so too slow, it sweeps you up and you get caught in it.
Mhm.
So you just have to take it one step at a time. And I'm really expanding on his visualization, but I really
Mhm.
liked the thought of when you start feeling stress and anxiety and despair and, all of these negative emotions,
Mhm.
coming back to the eye of your storm and being like, okay,
Mhm.
we can always, no matter what's going on, stop
Yep.
and breathe for 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Everybody's like, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to... Yes, you do. You have time to stop and breathe for 30 seconds,
Yeah.
no matter what is going on. And
Mhm.
even in, I mean, like if you're driving a vehicle and somebody
Mhm.
veers over in your lane, sure, you have to react immediately. But honestly, that's probably the only type of like scenario, like accidents and stuff that jump out at you like that, or the only time that you don't have 30 seconds to
Mhm.
breathe. Most of us can
Mhm.
count those moments on one hand for our entire life. Okay. We're not encountering them on a day-to-day constant basis. And if you are, you probably should like reevaluate some things.
Yeah.
But 'cause, I mean, honestly, I guess there is some, oh, I could go on 18,000 tangents no matter what subject we land on. But reeling myself back in.
I
Uh,
love that.
you know, yeah.
No, I love that. I love that when you said the I. I was thinking about the I, the I, the me. And when you start questioning who you are, something very interesting happens. At first, the mind responds quickly. It says, "I'm this. I'm so and so, and this. I'm my name, my role, my story, my history." And for a while, right, that feels like an answer. But if you stay with that question, and if you don't rush past it, you begin to notice something deeper. You start to notice the place from which those answers come. That place, that the one that says I am, is where the real inquiry begins. It is as simple as that, like you said, Savannah. It is that I. And how the beautiful, the synchronicity just worked beautifully. And you talked about the eye of the hurricane, and then I kind of related to the eye, and it's beautiful how this conversation's unfolding. But
Yeah,
that place, right? The the
it's
one that says
magical.
I am. It is. It truly whimsical it is. You
If you
are
look for it,
whimsical.
if you look for, life imitates art,
Hmm.
art
Oh.
imitates life. It's all a
Hmm.
feedback loop. Everything's always feeding
Hmm.
back into itself. That's why you get back what you focus on. That's why
Yep.
if you focus on love, gratitude, compassion,
Hmm.
spaciousness, peace. And you're just like, no, 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 love, gratitude, passion. And like you can get really frustrated. And I'm like, love,
Right.
gratitude, passion. Like we all hit those moments. And it's just,
Hmm.
if we have the mental resilience, the
Yep.
stubbornness to
Hmm.
even when things are obviously in turmoil, and like
Right.
we can get into that toxic positivity, toxic spirituality. There are those, where you
Hmm.
get too blindery and stubborn. But again, that's the rigidity, It's always coming back. If you're looking for signs, the signs will come back to you in a way that you can understand them. And all of the answers are within us, and all of the answers are around us. We just have to want to look for them. We have to want to um, face what we're going to find, because that's most of the problem is that we don't want to face it. We don't want to look at it. I have friends, they'll call me and I'll spend an hour on the phone with them. And they called me
Hmm.
because they have this one problem in their life that
Hmm.
they just don't know what to do about. And we'll spend the entire time, the entire hour conversation,
Yeah.
them telling me how to solve the problem and what they need to do,
Hmm.
just for the end of the conversation to be like, I just don't know what to do. No, you do. You don't want that to be the
Mhm.
answer. You don't want that truth. You're that's most of our problems. We know what we need to do. We just don't want to. We don't want the
Mhm.
responsibility. We don't want the pressure. It's a lot of pressure to
Mhm.
take responsibility for your own life, your own. Having free will is,
Mhm.
we love freedom. We don't want people to tell us what to do. But then we have free will, and it's like, can someone please tell me what to do? Waking up like some of us find purpose in our job, in our
Mhm.
parenthood, in our roles, that we take on as uh, mother, daughter,
Mhm.
wife, um, CEO, whatever, whatever our roles are that we've
Mhm.
decided.
Mhm.
And we put up our blinders against ourselves. And we just fulfill these
Mhm.
roles day after day, moment after moment. We're just filling roles. We're filling roles. We're putting ourselves to the side and filling these roles. And then we're wondering why we feel empty and hurt and anxious and stressed out, and like we don't, like I have a purpose. Obviously I'm doing the things, I'm fulfilling
Mhm.
my roles are my purpose, but then something still feels empty, like we're missing our purpose or fulfillment. Because if it's not fulfilling you, if it's not making you feel whole,
Mhm.
it's not your purpose. It's not what you're like, maybe to an extent. And again, here we are with like words are fallible. And that's why there's
Mhm.
10,000 languages in the world. And, we have, you think about it, we have 10,000 languages, and I'm just throwing a number out there. It's probably
Yep.
more than that. That means we have 10,000 words plus for chair,
Mhm.
So if you think about that, there are words that exist in this language, but not that language. And there's words that take, um, in like for example, in the English language, it takes three words to say this one thing, but in Spanish, it takes one word to say that exact same thing.
Yep.
So, words are so problematic, and we have to really look
Mhm.
in between them because we get stuck on them. But tangent again, but
That was good tangent. Great tangent. I
awesome.
loved it.
Great. Yeah,
I lo
nature is a great analogy for everything that we're trying to figure out.
Right. But also, I have a friend that does rational things, right? She's like, okay, I'm just
Irrational?
gonna like, yeah, irrational things. But what about the consequences though, Savannah? Like, how does it affect other people? And how much of care that, we are supposed to place in the feelings of hurting the other person through our action, right? And that is something that I've struggled with because I don't want to hurt people, and
Hmm.
I'm a biggest people pleaser on the planet. I've been
Hmm.
that, and
Most of us
I'm
are.
recovering. So it's hard for me to disappoint, and then
Yes.
this comes from the childhood wounds, I guess, whatever that I went through as a childhood, as a child. I don't want to hurt anyone, so I'm
Mhm.
always in that safe. I'm always walking on the eggshells and making sure that
Sacrificing
I'm
yourself.
sacrificing myself so other person can feel better, so we could have, not take that responsibility, because if I have to shake things up, that means a lot of things are gonna go down the drain. And
But
that's
imagine how wonderful the world could be if
mm,
they took responsibility for their own happiness instead of laying it on
mm,
you. And that's, that's the thing, that relationships are
mhm,
the most fulfilling thing in our lives,
mhm.
always. We're communal creatures. We're supposed to be connected.
Right.
We need that connection to feel
Mm,
whole. But relationships are also the most painful, detrimental to our health
mm,
and well-being, and problematic things in our life. Most people are in therapy because of people who won't go to
mhm.
therapy. And it's hard. You have to be brave to
Mhm,
disappoint people. And, all of us have to figure that out. I think most of
mhm.
either we're people pleasers or we're
Right.
narcissistic, egotistical assholes. That's for the most part, that's the
Yep.
the
Yep.
general synopsis. And, since we know this, we really don't want to be
Hmm.
that bad, quote unquote, quote, bad
Hmm.
person. Um,
Right.
but we have to learn how to fulfill ourselves and
Mm,
know that, again, we're only one person. We can only do so much.
mhm,
And we cannot ever, no matter how hard we try, be everything for one person. That's why we're
mhm,
communal creatures. We need an entire village because
mhm,
we can't get everything we need from one person. We can't get everything we need from three people. We
mhm.
need to do our best to get what we need from ourselves, fill our own cups up as much as
Yep.
we can. And then we have the capacity to help others fill their own cup. But it's still their responsibility to fill up their cup. And that is the hardest part of finding
Mhm,
balance in life that I've found, is the teeter-totter between I need people in my life,
mhm,
in my village, to love me, help me, support me,
mhm,
but I need to meet them where they're at. And I think it's so funny, people, they always say you can't choose your family, but you can choose your
mhm.
friends.
Yep.
That is hysterical to me. I've never chosen anybody that's ended up in my life. The universe gives you people, you just end up with people, and they're the
Yep.
randomest people. I'm looking around at these people like
Hmm.
I would have never, if, like, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friend. That suggests that there were 500 people lined up and I got to go through and pick and choose which ones I wanted. I assure you, that is not how I ended up with the people I ended up with. I love them dearly, right? But
Of course.
it's always life gives you
Hmm.
random people, and you have to decide, do I get enough from this relationship
Hmm.
to accept it and pour energy into it? And, like, the internet has given us, everybody knows what a red flag is now. So, like,
Hmm.
used to, we just kind of like swept things under the rug, or because
Hmm.
we needed people and we knew it, and this is who we had to work with.
Right.
So, making the best of it, even though they're toxic as hell. It
Hmm.
is what it is. This is who my mom is. This
Yeah.
is who my sister is. This is who like it, whoever. They are
Right.
who they are. So you make the best of it. And then the internet came along and showed us what red flags were and what's okay and what's not okay,
Hmm.
which is a wonderful thing. But
Yeah.
we took it, we always overcorrect before we balance
Hmm.
out. So
Mhm.
then everybody just cut everybody off, and everybody was like, "Oh, I don't need you." Actually, turns out I can be my own independent woman.
Mhm.
And but then we come back and we're like, "Oh, I'm actually kind of lonely now." And we judge this person or that person. This person comes into our life and we're like, oh, they're not cool enough. Uh, and then this person comes into our life and we're like, oh, I'm kind of embarrassed to be seen with them. And then this person comes into our life and we're like, God, they never shut up. They talk constantly. I leave feeling so
Mhm.
drained. But then you have to and then you go a few days and you're like, even though they did not let me get a word in
Yeah.
and I left feeling drained.
Mhm.
That was actually really fulfilling because I felt cozy and comfortable in their presence.
Mhm.
And our kids and their kids get along beautifully, and that fulfills a need.
Right.
And they fed me really good food. So, I mean, like, we can absolutely bond over
Yep.
our mutual
Mhm.
love for food. Like, I go to their house and I
Mhm.
know I'm going to eat.
Mhm.
That's nice. I don't have to worry about that.
Yep. Yep.
So you have to learn. There's a story that I like that
Mhm.
I heard one time that kind of stuck with me, and it was this guy talking about his boss and how
Yes.
he had been with this boss for 20
Mhm.
years,
Mhm.
and only him had been with this boss. Like they had had other
Oh.
employees come and go, and nobody could handle the boss and how much of an asshole he was, except for him. And he was like, was he an asshole to me? Yeah, he kind of was.
Oh.
But I knew that I could trust him. I knew that I
Mhm.
was never going to be without a job. I knew he would never leave me
Mhm.
behind. I knew he would always take care of me. I knew that he would be honest with me, and I never had to think, what did he mean by that? No, he's going to tell you exactly what he means by that, and that's why people don't like
Mhm.
him, you know? And I really liked that because that's exactly how life is. You have to
Mhm.
you have to sit and you have to figure out your values. We were
Mhm.
talking earlier about something and anyway, um, getting straight to it. Most of figuring out
Mhm.
ourselves, that clarity, that purpose, that fulfillment, most of it is unlearning all of the layers that
Mhm.
society and culture and relationships and people and family and yada yada whatever media have put on us as
Mhm.
a mode of steering us in one direction for what we should be,
Mhm.
quote unquote, should be, and
Mhm.
us trying our best to fulfill those roles and archetypes in the way that is
Mhm.
fit for those people and that thing. So again, it complex becoming simple.
Mhm.
It's not about figuring out who you are. It's
Mhm.
about figuring out who you're not and what you're not. And the who am I, just always coming back to
Mhm.
the who am I. And we're not our
Mhm.
roles, we're not our jobs, we're not our status of this or that.
Mhm. Mhm.
We're our values. We are our
Yep.
values that we hold in our heart, you know.
Mhm.
And if you're always coming back to your values, because again, relationships were the hardest part of my life, always. And just
Mhm.
like the asshole boss in the story, I
Mhm.
also apparently was the asshole for the most of the time. And I'm like, I don't understand how. I don't understand how I'm the asshole.
Mhm.
I'm just telling the truth, I'm just being honest. And most people can't
Mhm.
handle honesty, for one. Um, but for two, I had to, because I really went into a dark place I spiraled down
Mhm.
very deeply for a very long time of despair and depression of, am I the problem? I don't understand how I'm the problem. And
Mhm.
how can I stop being the problem? And that's, I think, where a lot of us land. We interact with the world and the world interacts back with us negatively. Children are
Right.
just honest. They're just
Yep.
themselves. They just
Yep.
are who they are. And they're not ill meaning. The vast
Mhm.
majority don't mean harm. If they
Mhm.
are putting forth harm, it's mostly in uh there's mostly other things going on, like at home with their family and
Mm,
how they're being shaped and whatnot. But children just are who they are, and then we go out, we're children, we're honest, and we're interacting with the world, and the world is interacting back with us in a negative way, and then we
mm,
internalize that, and we think something's wrong with us. But it's and then all these layers of goop get stacked on
yeah.
us by ourselves because we're trying to fix
Hmm.
ourselves and we're trying to put ourselves into a better state that is more acceptable and digestible for the people around us so that, um, maybe I won't make her yell anymore. Maybe I won't make her hit me anymore. Maybe I won't make her,
Hmm.
this, that, whatever, whatever. And I'll finally get love. I'll finally get that connection. I'll finally stop being lonely. I'll finally be happy. And what helped me a lot was figuring out what my values were. Like what was
Hmm.
non-negotiable. Am I always doing my best and living, acting, speaking from my heart, from a place of love and compassion and softness? And if the answer is, if I can say yes to my values, if I have
Hmm.
questions and like, am I doing the right thing here? And I can come back to my values and be like, am I coming from the heart? And if the answer is
Hmm.
yes, then okay, what actually is 9 times out of 10, it's
Hmm.
people, the problem is not you, it's where it's coming from. It's
Hmm.
insecurities and problems within them and themselves, the impatience, the can't sit with the emotions. So they're
Yeah.
lashing out. And
Yeah.
instead of, again, the child is crying. And instead of being patient
Hmm.
and, oh, why are you crying, child? Is there anything I can love and help and hug you into better? Like,
Hmm.
can we solve this problem? It's, why are you crying? I'll give you something to cry about. You get up. You don't even know what tired is. You don't know what, and like, the adult problem. That's not the child problem. And you
Yep.
take that analogy and you put it across every relationship and every interaction
Hmm.
you have with everybody. That you go into the
Hmm.
coffee shop and you talk to the barista and she's being an asshole for whatever reason. And we can choose to internalize that, or we can be like, oh wow, they're having a really bad day. Or, like most often or not, like we just turn around and be an asshole right back. You're like, oh, you want to give me that? I'll give you back right back to you. But that's an eye for an eye leaves
Yep.
the whole world blind.
Hmm.
It's so frustrating to always have to be the one to hold the peace, to always have to be the one who's the bigger person, to always have to be the one who's not allowed to have a bad day. As a mom, I see it in my household all the
Hmm.
time. Everybody's hunky dory as long as I'm hunky dory, but as soon as I have a bad attitude, everybody
Yeah.
else comes out with their bad attitudes tenfold. And I'm like, this is so not fair. But, it's lonely at the top, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important to kind of go inside and and get to the basics and just be that person, but also it's difficult to hold peace wherever you go. And then I think that's what hurts me, eats me up a little by little, deep inside, being that the person that always wants to please and wants to keep everyone happy around me. And
It's
yeah, I'm
exhausting.
working through it. It's very much so, very much so. It's like I'm self-sacrificing myself every single second. And life is meant to be lived. I know this, but it's so hard to embody this in practice. And I'm work in progress. I always say this. I'm working through this process, and I don't know. Hopefully, I'll make it this life, or maybe the next 10,000. Who knows? It's I'm doing the best I can with what's given in this life, and just being that authentic version of myself. Just putting myself out here and just being who I am in the real world.
Yeah.
So it's
I was thinking just a couple of days ago, it just like hit
mhm.
me. I don't know. Like I wasn't even doing anything. I was like, I don't know,
Yeah.
walking through my kitchen and it just like hit me like I was doing laundry. That's what I was doing. I was walking through my bedroom doing
Yeah.
laundry and it just hit me like a
Mhm.
sack of bricks. I was like, I wonder if like I was listening to music or a podcast or something. It was just
Mhm.
completely left field. And I connected in my brain reincarnation with in in Christianity and I don't know how it is elsewhere. In the Christianity in the Bible, it says the goal is everlasting peace in
Mhm.
the kingdom of heaven, so all eternity in the kingdom of heaven or eternal damnation in hell. Okay, so those are like
Mhm.
and the idea is that once you die, you go to A or you go to B.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
what if, um, you know, reincarnation is a thing, and
Mhm.
instead of heaven or hell being a place,
Right.
a lot of people have um said that heaven or hell is not a place you go, it's earth, it's life,
Mhm.
it's here, and you can choose
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
Either it is heaven or it is hell. It can be both. It can be either,
Mhm.
depending on which one you decide on. And what if like we're learning and we're growing, and then
Mhm.
we die and we're reincarnated, and then we pick up the same habit because we're all born with a personality. Okay,
Mhm.
we are, and this is not like a scientific thing. I think that forever it's been the blank slate theory, like we're like
Mhm.
nature versus nurture type of thing. And to an extent, absolutely, absolutely nature versus nurture. And that's why it's always an unlearning that we're
Mhm.
going towards. But as a
Yep.
mom, the personality that my children had the day that they were born
Mhm.
is the
Mhm.
personality that they have kept up until this point. And I can see it in all of my friends' kids as well. Like, if they
Mhm.
were a really whiny, crying baby, they're probably a really whiny and crying 10-year-old. And then, like, my daughter has been all
Mhm.
smiles and giggles since the day
Mhm.
she was born. Like, I swear she was smiling the day she
Mhm.
was born. She's our little smiley girl. She's always happy. And so, what if we just carry who we are into we can't escape ourselves, right? So, learn what we are and learn who we are, learn what the lessons are that we need to be a better version
Mhm.
of ourselves to whatever that means, because a better version of ourselves, okay, what does that even mean? It's relative for one.
Mhm.
But I think we could mostly agree that it would be healthy, happy, helpful, right?
Yeah.
Healthy, happy, and able to be a better influence rather than a negative influence on the people around us and the world. So,
Absolutely.
it's theoretically speaking then, based on all of this, is that if we figure out how to be happy in this life,
Mhm. Mhm.
perhaps we'll go into the next life already tuned to that.
Mhm.
Whereas if we're playing the victim and always like, oh, woe is me, the world hates
Mhm.
me, why does the world done this to me?
Mhm.
And we never learn any of our lessons and we die miserable, then we wake up in the next
Mhm.
life the same amount of miserable. There's no escape, and so on and so forth for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, and that's interesting because in Hinduism they call that karma. You
Yes.
carry the karma from the past lives, and that's what it's all about. We're here, we put in this earth to it's like a bank account. You have like $1 million of karma associated with you, and you just come to earth and spend that the make that million into 500,000 and then go until becomes zero. You have to reincarnate into this world, and in the end you have to learn the lesson to get out. You have to learn the lesson that there's only one God, there's only one person here. That's us. That's all there is. There's just one individual that's experiencing every life in different forms in different ways, and it's that's the core of every religion, is
Hmm.
that there's oneness. There's no God, there's no separate heaven or hell,
But let's
or there's
argue
this one.
about whether his name is this
Mhm.
or that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let's argue if it's Tao or if it's Jesus Christ. It's Brahman, Krishna, like Seriously, it's
Let's miss the point entirely.
but right, and then yeah, and then it's love. The core message is love.
Hmm.
Just love everyone, love everything, and but it's so difficult to do that, to be in that space, but we are work in progress. It is it's happening. It's I call this the illusion of separation. Right when I was doing a lot of research on what is the illusion of the separation from like from a Taoist perspective, right? It's very interesting because it's a continuous process, and separation appears only when we stop flowing with what is natural and begin naming, dividing, grasping, right? In nature, nothing is separate. A river does not argue with the shore, and a tree does not compete with the forest. The wind does not ask where it belongs. Everything just moves, just simply
Hmm.
moves. And human beings are the only ones who say, "This is me. That is not me." And the moment we do that, that's when the tension is born.
Hmm.
And Lao Tzu talks about this in Tao Te Ching. And when we start naming things, good and bad, success and failure, we lose sight. We lose sight of life itself, not because it disappears, but because we just stop seeing it. The Tao, that the being in that flow just stops flowing. And we are the ones who step out of this rhythm. And from the Taoist view, the separation is not a mortal failure, right? It's a misunderstanding. It's what happens when mind takes control and forgets the body, forgets the breath, the earth, the present moment, and we start to believe that we are fixed self moving through a hostile or indifferent world, and we have to push, we have to force, we have to resist. And that's where the real struggle begins. But this also does not mean that we do nothing, right? It means
Hmm.
we still have to act. We still have to act in harmony with what already is. And when we act with harmony with the current, that sense of separation, it disappears. It just naturally, slowly, it disappears. And I saw that in my own life. And when I talk about Tao, when I do my act of service to Tao, I do feel like I'm becoming one. And think of like a wave in the ocean, right? The wave can say, "I'm separate, I rise and fall alone," or it can recognize that it is the ocean temporarily moving in a particular form. And from a Taoist perspective, you're not separate from life. You are life moving as you. Your breath is not yours alone. Your body is not self-made. Your thoughts arise from conditions that you did not choose. This doesn't make you powerless, right? It makes you relational. And when we forget this, this is when the fear appears and we become obsessed with control, and I want this and I want that identity or the outcome, and I try to dominate the life instead of just dancing with it. But when that illusion of separation softens and something different happens, right? You don't force your way forward, and I tend to listen more. I tend to respond instead of react. And compassion becomes natural, not like a moral thing that I need to perform. And humility just becomes kind of ease, and not as a weakness that I'm constantly judging myself on. And because when I know that I am part of this whole universe, this nature, I don't need to prove myself against anyone. Taoism doesn't ask me to destroy my individuality, or the nature doesn't ask you to destroy your individuality. It just asks you to stop clinging to it. You still act, you still choose, but you act like water, which is like flexible and it's responsive, and it's just strong and without that aggression. And water does not fight the rocks, yet over time it shapes mountains, and that's the power of non-separation. Right? The illusion of separation ends not through effort, belief, or a philosophy, but through returning to the breath, returning to simplicity, returning to what is already there. And lots of calls this returning to the root. You're returning to the root of who you are. And when you return, you don't become something new. You simply stop pretending you are ever apart. And in that remembering, life tends to become lighter. And we get to move along the way, which is as smooth as it could get with all the synchronicities. that just starts appearing in life as you move through the life that is aligned and in flow with the Tao.
Hmm. Yeah, you have to be okay with not knowing what's next. Which is
Yes.
hilarious. I
Yep.
I had a really hard time when my kids were little because
Mm.
I'm not one to be tied down and kids tie you
Mm.
down, you know? And so I was always fighting with, oh, I have all these things to do, but I can
Yep.
do none of them. I can get none of them done because
Mm.
being a mom takes literally 24/7,
Mm.
100% of all of your
Oh yeah.
energy. So, something that finally helped me start on my journey of acceptance and malleability and
Mm.
patience is I figured out that most
Mm.
of my stress was coming from, not being able to accomplish the to-do list
Mm.
that I had, the
Yep.
plan that I
Yep.
had for the day. So
Mm.
I let go and I was like, you know what? Okay, so here's the plan for the day. It's good to have
Mm-hmm.
a direction. Having no
Mm-hmm.
direction, if you don't plan to succeed, you plan to fail or whatever, whatever. And
Yep.
so here's the plan because you need direction, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not attached to the plan. So
Mm.
if the universe allows, if God allows, if the divine allows, here's what we will accomplish today. But
Mm.
if, the grander scheme can see more than I can, I can't see the greater picture. I can only see a limited, minuscule amount of the picture.
Mm.
So I will recognize that and I will just wake up each day and see what
Mm.
life holds for me. And if
Mm.
it's something different, then that's okay because it's, probably the greater good. It's probably, it knows better than I do or whatever.
Mm.
And so now I kind of do the same thing. I wake up, I have a plan each morning. And then if the plan goes awry, instead of fighting that and freaking out about that, which is what most of us do, getting angry about
Oh
it,
yeah. Yep.
uh, you just have to be malleable. So, I recently signed up for college classes again. So I'm going back
Nice.
for,
Exciting.
yeah, yeah, it is. I'm going back for an associate's in health science. It just makes
Nice.
sense to do so. This is not something I had planned to do at any
Mm-hmm.
point. It just kind of popped up out of
Yep.
nowhere
Yep.
and was very persistent. So I was like, well,
Mm.
okay. And then so I've been going through this process of enrolling, and my husband goes, okay, so what's the plan after that? Like, what are you going to do with this? I was like, calm down. We don't
We
know.
don't need.
Okay, we don't have a
Yeah.
clue. We don't know what's in
Mm-hmm.
store for the future. We
Yep.
just know that this is what we're doing right now,
Yep.
and we will do it until things inevitably shift, and then we'll do something
Mm.
else. And, you know, this has historically been who I was. I went to college
Mm.
for a while for this thing, and then I went and
Mm.
and then I was collecting certifications for a while, and
Nice.
they seem unconnected, but they never really were
Mhm.
unconnected. But
Mm.
like, for example, herbalism seems disconnected from Reiki, seems
Mm.
disconnected from birth work.
Yep.
Okay. So to my husband's very simple right brain or left brain mindset was like, what puzzle are you putting together right now? Because A plus B doesn't equal C. Like, what are you doing?
Mm.
And, you know, life is art. We are our own best work. And it all builds to be something beautiful in the end that none of us could predict.
Mm.
So, divine, uh, alignment, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Nobody can be us.
Beautiful.
It's We're figuring it out as we go. You don't need all the answers. You don't
Mm.
need to know what the picture is going to be because you can't
Mm.
know what the picture is going to be. So the sooner, and you trying to figure out what the picture is going to be, it takes a lot of
Right.
energy and brain bandwidth, when you can just accept that, I don't know. And it's just fun. It's fun for now. So have fun. If you were talking earlier about how this is your
Mm.
purpose, and I really can see that. I can see when you start talking about it, you do get into that flow and it's effortless and you can see everything
Mhm.
light up and the heart fulfillment that is there for you. And that's why, people we think we want this or that and it's like, oh, I want to be a rock star, so I'm going to start creating music but if you're in it for the wrong reasons, if you're in it to make money and be famous, which is what a lot of people are trying to do, right? They want to be
Mhm.
a YouTube star, they want to be a podcaster, they want to be a whatever, whatever, to be rich and famous like Joe Rogan. And
Mhm.
the truth of the matter is that if you're in it for the wrong reasons,
Mhm.
you're never going to accomplish that. You need to figure out what makes you happy
Mhm.
and what lights you up today, just
Mhm.
today. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be that deep. If you let things be simple and easy and just happy for today, it'll build. Like none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. We don't know we could, have a car accident as soon as we leave this meeting, and then that's a
Mhm.
wrap, folks. Never found happiness. We
Yeah.
put too much on these things. We take it all
Mhm.
too seriously. Just figure out what makes you happy today. And then if that's
Yep.
what makes you happy tomorrow, great. If that's what makes you happy the next day, awesome. If you want to just keep doing it, keep doing it. If you find yourself obsessed with it, great. If one day you wake up and you're like, I think I've gotten everything I
Mhm.
need from this and I'm done, that doesn't mean you're a quitter. That doesn't mean that you are uh problematic in any way or don't have
Mhm.
direction, don't know what you
Mhm.
like, doesn't mean that you're a mess up. It just means that you got what you needed from that, and now it's time to start a new journey that's going to build on that. And at
Mhm.
the end, every single one, we all have life is art. We all have more or less, not always, but more or less the same
Mhm.
paint colors to work with. But
Mhm.
some paint colors are more accessible and some paint colors are further away. And some of us have paint colors that nobody else has seen before. And some of us, we have paint color. We're using the same color, but in a different way. This person used more and this person used less. And at the end of our lives, the piece of art that's left, the only the only thing that's going to matter is how you made people feel along the way. Nobody cares how
Mhm.
much money you had. Nobody cares what your status was. Nobody remembers how popular you were or whatever, whatever. They remember I had an interaction with that person, and every time I interacted with them, I
Mhm.
left feeling better and with a smile on my face because that
Mhm.
person always had the patience to create space and take time for me, no matter what was going on.
Mhm. And do all that without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the beauty. That's, yeah, that's just trusting that everything will work out the way it is meant to work out. It's having that trust and surrender and not expecting anything in return. And you have to be an extremely good person and a very patient, gentle, and very considerate to really embody that and to live in this world. And I see that in you. So I know you are one of those people,
Well,
and I'm
thank you.
really, really,
Some
really
people would
honored.
disagree. And that's the thing. You have to be
Well,
okay.
that's
There's nothing you
yeah.
could do that's going to make every single person happy. There,
Oh yeah.
like, because we're only one person and we only have X amount of capacity, you know? So
Yeah.
you have to, unfortunately, you can hold the
Mm-hmm.
belief that, again, it's a paradox, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
hold the belief that every person matters so much
Yeah.
while also holding the belief that I'm only one person and I can only be
Mm-hmm.
so much for so many people, you know? And
Yeah.
that unfortunately means that you're going to hit a wall where it's like I don't
Mhm.
have the capacity to be what
Mhm.
these people over here
Yeah.
want me to be. So
Yeah.
I'm unfortunately going to have to disappoint all of these people to make sure that I never disappoint my daughter, my son, my husband,
Mhm.
yada yada, whoever it is, my grandmother,
Mhm. Mhm.
this best friend that I have, that
Mhm.
why is she so important? Why is she the person that you've chosen
Mhm.
to pay attention to? Because she chose me. You know, when I was having a hard time,
Hmm.
she held space for me. So now I'm going to turn around and hold space for her because she needs it. And I'm going to choose her over you because that's
Mm.
just the relationship that we've built. It doesn't mean that she's more important than you. It means
Mm.
that we only have X amount of bandwidth to work with
Yeah,
because we're
true.
limited beings. We're one
Yeah.
person. And we can, if we try to stretch ourselves thin to please every single
Mhm.
person and then we destroy ourselves because where is that energy coming from? We're taking it from ourselves
Mm.
and disintegrating in the process. And
Mm.
then everyone loses. So,
Yeah.
boundaries. We could
Yeah.
do a whole nother hour, I think.
We
I
do.
loved talking to you.
Same here, Savannah. It's really been an honor. I think we've touched a lot of topics that I've actually not talked in my other podcasts. So this is very, very, very deeply enriching experience for me as well. So I'm really really honored to be here and to know you, and hope we could get in touch, get to do this again sometime.
I would love to do
Um,
this again.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. It's absolute honor and pleasure to be here.
I
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Thank
Tell people, you mentioned it earlier a little bit, but tell people about your book
you.
and where to find it. And then, of course, I will link that below and stuff.
Of course, of course. Can I take a minute to just talk about how the book is structured, and then I
Sure.
think I'll,
Whatever you like.
okay. Yeah, because it wasn't like designed to be a very traditional book, and that's very intentional. Embracing Paradox is obviously inspired by the Tao Te Ching, but it is not meant to be read intellectually from like the beginning to end. It is meant to be lived with. So the first section of the book begins with the translation of each verse, where I approached the Tao Te Ching. I didn't rely on a single translation. I spent time on multiple translations, some ancient, some modern, poetic, academic, not to decide which one was right, but to listen to the shared experience beneath the words. And I wanted to understand the core message of each verse, the heartbeat behind the language. And once that became clear, I would sit with it in a very deep meditation and contemplation, and not to analyze it further, but let it settle into my body and my lived experience. And I stayed there until something just felt right. And only then I would write, but not what the verse meant historically, but what it is asking of us today, how it might meet us in daily life, in relationships, in work, in uncertainty, in moments when life doesn't give us clear answers. And that's why this section is the book is not like a commentary, it's a translation through presence. And the second section explores the paradox in each verse, because the Tao never speaks in straight lines, it speaks in reversals, tensions, and contradictions. So, this part of the book comes from my embodied experience, not theory, not perfection, but lived attempts where I got it right, moments where I didn't, moments where life forced me to slow down and surrender or see differently. I wanted to be honest about that, because paradox isn't something you resolve, right? It's something you walk with. And then each chapter ends with an affirmation. This part is important because these affirmations were really not written for an audience, they were written for me as anchors, as reminders to return to myself when the mind pulled me too far ahead or too far back. And when I noticed over time, was that this process of reading, reflecting, embodying, affirming quietly changed my life. Not dramatically, but not overnight, but deeply. It kind of softened how I met myself. It changed how I moved through uncertainty. It helped me be gentler in moments when I would have once been harsh. And that's when the idea of publishing the book rose, not as a goal, but as a question. If this process helped me, what if it could meet someone else where they are? And so the book grew, and it became larger than what I expected, but because not because I planned it that way, but because Tao just kept unfolding verse by verse, reflection by reflection. And here's how I imagine the book being used. You don't need to read it in order. In fact, I would suggest you don't. You can open to any page randomly and read what is there. And I also have a website. It is www.embracingparadox.com. And you can read the first 5 chapters of the book, and get a feel for it. And if you really like it, do reach out to me. There's a contacts page. So yeah, I would love to stay in touch with you, Savannah.
I would like that too. All
Thank you.
right. We'll let everybody go.